Hello. Today I will be doing a case study on the protagonist named Yusuke Urameshi from the show called YuYu Hakusho, which is a Japanese animation. The goal of this video is for me to use social learning theory and attachment theory and applying those to our character Yusuke Urameshi. Before we begin explaining the different theories, I feel like it is very important for me to explain just a little bit about this character. He's a 14-year-old junior high student. He's a delinquent who lives only with his mother. His father's not really around. He's just a no-show. And he really only has one friend, or at least at the start of the show, he only has one friend, and she is his love interest. Um, he is a fictitious character, obviously, and he lives in a world similar to ours, except in his world there are ghosts and demons that will occasionally cause trouble in the human world, and his job is to be spirit detective to round them all up and make sure they don't do those bad things. So growing up, Yusuke's home life was pretty rough. As I've already mentioned, his mom is just an alcoholic. Oh, I guess I never mentioned that earlier. But yeah, his mom's an alcoholic. His dad's not really around. And just like without all of that, he's just had an unstable home life. And like through all of that, he's developed a very unhealthy attachment style. Attachment theory was coined by John Bowlby. However, it was later expanded upon by Mary Ainsworth, who was one of his assistants. And even though John Bowlby was the proprietor of this theory, Ainsworth was the one who came up with the different attachment styles that we now know today. Um, she found these different attachment styles as a result to her very famous experiment called the strange situation procedure, which involved primary caregivers to leave the examination room and then come back to the examination room. And what they would do is document how the infant reacted to the caregiver leaving and coming back. And through this, she found three different attachment styles. The first one, being the only good one, is secure attachment, which is where infants are distressed upon separation. However, they feel much more comforted whenever their primary caregiver is back with them. And vice versa, we can also assume that the caregiver of this infant tends to respond frequently to the want for affection from the infant. Now, the next two are not the best attachment styles. The next one I will mention is the avoidant attachment style, which the infant just essentially shows very little interest or shows very little distress whenever their primary caregiver leaves. And when they come back, they don't feel very much relieved. And like from the caregiver's perspective, maybe that's just them like denying like the child's like need for affection or want for affection. And then the last type is ambivalent. Hope I said that right. Anyways, uh, that attachment style is like infants are distressed upon separation, and through reunion, they are still not able to be calmed down, and it takes a much longer time for the infant to calm down. And if you're looking at this from the caregiver's perspective, we can see that the caregiver is probably a little um, inconsistent, or maybe they're just a very chaotic caregiver. They're just like not very stable as their parents or grandmother, aunt. I mean, it's 2024. You could have somebody who's not your parent be your primary caregiver. I'm one of those people. Smile. Anyways, back to the matter at hand with Yusuke. So, anyways, Bowlby and Ainsworth also theorized that one's attachment style can correlate to relationships later on in life. And knowing that Yusuke's mother was absent in his life, he most likely has an ambivalent attachment style, which his mother being the only caregiver and the fact that she was drinking on and off, and there was probably like moments where she was a good mom and moments where she was just a very distant, like she wasn't really always there for him. She was just there whenever she felt like it. I could see how he got that attachment style. However, this doesn't just only apply to him. This now applies to his relationship with his love interest that I mentioned way back earlier in like the introduction. And essentially, his relationship with her is not that great. He acts like a pervert and he just makes comments about her body, and it's just really weird. And overall, I mean, his relationship with this woman that he cares for deeply is just not very good, and that can be heavily attributed to his attachment style. Switching gears a little bit, as I mentioned before, Yusuke is a delinquent and chooses not to apply himself in academic senses. Hilariously, he boasted that he got a 12% on in a science exam, and I still think that's funny. I don't know, it's just one of the random things I thought of. Um, However, even though he doesn't learn in the classroom, he still learns like in a more practical sense, um, which is called vicarious learning, which is just learning by observing, also called observational learning, which the theory is called observational learning theory. And it's essentially just monkey see, monkey do. I look at someone I like and go, oh, they're doing this. I want to do it. And most of this observational learning theory can be accredited to Albert Bandera. He theorized that the social learning theory, that children with a model will mimic the behavior of that model. Essentially, both positive and negative can be learned from the vicarious learning. And here we will look at both a negative example and a positive example. First, we'll start with negatives because negativity bias. Hooray! Um, Growing up, as I mentioned, he didn't really have a great role model in his mother. And just because of all the connections she had, he kind of grew up around a bunch of shady people. He learned to street fight. And I mean, he became pretty good at it. I mean, he's one of the best street fighter teenagers in the city. He infamously has fought this same delinquent over and over and over again. It's well over 100 times. And I mean, obviously, like him learning that through those like bad models is not healthy because you shouldn't really be fighting people in the middle of the street anyways. You could cause severe damage to your brain, but that doesn't make for a good show. So obviously, he gotta like fight people, right? However, a more positive example with our spirit detective is when he was training with his martial arts master. Now, she would always harp on him for doing all of this stuff half-heartedly. Like he just doesn't put enough effort towards the things that he really cares about. And she just kept drilling that into him over and over and over again. And she told him the only reason that he was good at street fighting was because it's just something that he was not like the only reason why like he was good at it was because it was something he was naturally capable of doing. And it wasn't just the fact that like he put effort into it, because she just straight up told him you do not put effort into anything you do, and it just shows. However, through his training with her, he learned to have a he learned to be able to do something that he needs to do and sacrifice things for it. Especially later on the show when he has to basically sacrifice his life in order to save this girl that he loves. Yes, I'm referring to the love interest I've talked about before. Overall, this difficult upbringing, along with the models that our spirit detective has had along the way, has shaped and influenced his personality greatly. By using attachment theory and observational learning theory, we were able to understand just a small portion of Yusuke Urameshi's character. Thank you for having Thank you for having me. I appreciate me getting to yap about my favorite character. Um, Peace.